Chelsea, what's your example of reinvented adaptations, or
Here, I gotta look at the
whether
list.
it be from the list or your own example, even?
Where are we? Reinvented.
There were some things like I think John Carter. Well, John Carter's kind of in the gray area.
Okay, I think an interesting one to mention would be the Neverending Story.
Okay.
Oh,
So-
totally different.
Okay,
And I did
you
not
didn't like it,
I didn't
but
like
I
the
did.
book. I just read the book last year.
Isn't the book?
And I've been begging you to read the book.
She was like hyping it up, and
Isn't
I was
it
like,
even
yeah.
more depressing?
"This is so good," and it's just confusing fantasy.
confusing.
It's like
so it is
interdimensional.
okay. It is
stuff.
okay.
I
So
hate
the
that.
movie did a good job of adapting. The movie is just as weird as the book is. The book is not traditionally told in a linear way.
Yeah.
So it jumps around a lot. It doesn't follow the first act, second act, third act. And then like halfway through the book, you get exactly the adaptation of like the second movie where you bring in the same character, but then you bring in like a different character, and he starts having adventures with the kid who's the main character in a book.
Yeah.
The Indian kid. I
Yeah.
don't remember their names, but yeah. And so
Atreyu.
The
and
Indian
like
in the cupboard. That's what
It's
you're talking about, right?
Atreyu.
yeah, and I'm reading the book, and like I understand that what I'm reading is the movie, and then the movie ends halfway through the book, and it's like exactly like the movie. I got like pulled into the book, and I was like, "What is going on?" And all these like unlocked memories came back to me of the weird sequel movies they made, and then the Canadian animated series that they showed on HBO Family like years ago, like years and years
Late
ago,
90s.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I was
Really?
like, I remember all of this from that
We used to
animated
rent the
series,
VHS tapes
and
and
she
record
didn't
them.
remember any of it.
I
I
only
was
remembered
like,
them
what
when you
the-
told me about them.
And I knew, like, I remembered all the names and everything of like these
I
weird
didn't-
characters
see, I
that
didn't
nobody
remember
knows about and stuff. And so I like loved the book. I was entertained. I thought it was really cool. Like, even though like a lot of stuff was weird, I didn't think it was like bad in any way. And
I don't think it was
one
bad.
huge change they made that makes it just such an amazing read. Which, if you've never read the book, like you're in for like a huge surprise. Like this is like
you're gonna spoil the book.
I am gonna spoil the
guys
book,
are
All right,
everybody.
FYI, guys. If you were gonna
Disclaimer.
read, if you had Neverending Story on your shelf in the book form that it originally was, and you've yet to read it, well, too bad. We're gonna spoil it right now. So.
I'm sure it's
I'm
on
sure you meant to get to it at some
Hot
point,
book
but
right now.
too bad.
I can't imagine anybody unless you're a hardcore reader.
I was gonna
like,
say.
yeah. But anyway,
I don't
like
think it's a hot
so in the
item.
book, in the movie, the main antagonist, like the main villain, well, I mean, it's this non-entity that's destroying everything, but you have a servant of which is called the Nothing. You have a servant of the Nothing, and his name is Gamorak, and he takes the form in the movie of a wolf,
Okay.
of
yeah.
just a regular black wolf. That's it, but he can talk. And they got a really horrifying puppet.
Yeah, it was
The movie
pretty
traumatized us
traumatizing as a
kid.
child to watch that
Yeah,
movie.
but yeah, they did an excellent job in the movie, really making sure that you were really scared.
That's
of
one
that
thing that this dumb book didn't have was the charming puppetry that the movie it made it like
The book didn't have
Wow.
the puppet. Yeah, exactly.
I would have never
You
thought
were
of that.
easily entertained, apparently. Continue. But so in the movie, this figure, which takes the form of a wolf who chases Atreyu, that's the name of the main character in the movie, chases him. Atreyu faces off with him in the end, and he kills the wolf. Okay, so that's it. In the book, he catches up with the wolf in what used to be, I think they called it like October Town or something.
Yeah.
It was a place where everybody's imagination of like spooky ghosts and ghoulies come from. So like if you're Tim Burton, that's where all your ideas come from, okay? Or anybody else who's
Pretty
into
much.
that. Because the world of the Neverending Story is the imagination, people's imagination in the real world. So that this town is like, like spooky goblins and ghoulies and stuff. Well, it's abandoned. He gets there. He finds this werewolf chained up, and he starts speaking about his adventure. And the werewolf is dying because it's been trapped there so long. It's really dark. He's
Oh,
like
wow.
starving to death,
Jeez.
and he's just dying on the ground.
Dang.
And he tells Atreyu his story, and Atreyu with horror suddenly realizes that this is the thing that's been chasing him, and he tries to like back away from him slowly as he's telling him the story. And his story, like the wolf like got to this town, fell in love with the princess of this town. She's like the spooky October queen or whatever. He fell in love with her, and he got distracted from his mission, which was to kill Atreyu. And so he stayed in this town. She found out what his mission was. She chained him up and she said, we're all going to willingly go and jump into the nothing and you're going to be left here to die. So he was betrayed by somebody. It was like this whole story. I was like, what is happening? This is nothing. Like, I mean, it didn't need to be in the movie, but I did not expect
Apparently didn't need to be
that.
in the book either. So.
No, it was crazy because you don't expect that from something that you've been terrified of your whole life watching as a kid.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
you're like,
okay,
holy
yeah.
crap, this is like...
So that's the backstory.
I
of the
feel like
wolf.
that was-
Okay.
Yeah, and
Oh.
then their face-off is pretty gruesome.
good?
Like, he lockjaws onto Atreyu, and Atreyu is stuck there, like, and he dies lockjawed on him.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That is horrifying.
It's
Wow.
pretty awesome.
I feel like
so-
that was a more interesting aspect of the book because it's giving layers to it. Hollywood looked at that and said, no, we just need a villain.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's take
you
away...
need to, that's definitely a book thing only.
Yeah,
I feel
let's take
like
away
it
all the
didn't need to be in the
complex
movie. It
layers.
was just a really awesome surprise that made it different from the movie for me. Because
I
most
mean,
people by now have grown up just with the movie.
It
and
was
have
a
not
good
read the book.
tactic for a children's film because every child who watched that movie like had nightmares for the rest of their
nightmares
life.
forever.
Yeah, like I will always think of that wolf like from the
Yeah.
movie. And then I read the book and I'm like, this is just giving me flashbacks to a Wrinkle in Time book, and I hated that book.
I
So
hated
I'm
that
just
book
like,
too.
this is
I hated
just
the book. I hated
confusing.
every adaptation off of that
This
thing.
is confusing.
That's
But
interesting.
My favorite quote from the Neverending Story is, it's really sad when like he finds the rock giant and the rock giant's crying and he goes, they look like strong hands, don't they? And like he was supposed to hold on to his friends, but they got
oh
thrown out
yeah,
of
they
his...
got sucked in.
That's my favorite quote in the movie.
Oh man.
It's a really human moment. So
Yeah, from a very weird movie. Yeah. Oof.
I love that movie.
Hey, it fit the 80s perfectly.
Yeah. God bless Jim Henson Workshop on all the puppets they ever did. They are awesome.
Was it Jim Henson?
I mean, I'd be surprised.
I
if
can't
it
think of
wasn't.
anybody else who's
Better
doing
than
It's
this.
got.
Puppets.
I mean, it was in the '80s puppetry.
Look it up, Chelsea.
It has to be Jim Henson. Let's see.
I feel like we don't really have to talk about faithful adaptation too much unless there's one you really want to talk
Let's
about.
jump to perfect. Actually,
These were just my
perfect.
personal ones. You guys don't have to follow this. You guys probably have your own perfect adaptation.
okay. All right. So we'll list them off. What do you got?
I had a whole bunch, but I just did the top 5.
Okay, do top 5.
My
Yeah,
number
what do we got?
one most perfect adaptation, I think that perfectly balances elements from the book but reinvents it into a beautiful visual movie is A Monster Calls. And J.A. Bayona was the director.
Mhm.
Patrick Ness, who wrote the book, he actually took an original manuscript from the guy. Do you remember the guy who wrote the book? Chelsea, the original guy who wrote the book of A Monster Calls. I think it's
Patrick Ness.
No, the guy he took it from.
Oh no,
He
I
took
don't.
Who
it from
died?
somebody.
It's the guy who wrote the story.
I'm like looking at the book like. No, I don't.
The guy passed away from some like cancer or something.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
He wrote the book about a boy grieving his mother who is currently dying of cancer.
Hmm.
So he took that, published it. It became an award-winning novel. J.A. Bayona took the book and adapted it into one of the most perfect movies ever.
Really?
Like, it's so good. And I would, you could argue, but it doesn't have the beautiful illustrations that's in the book by, I can't remember the name of the artist. The illustrations are really fascinating. They take those illustrations and make animated sequences in the movie as the monsters telling you stories.
Interesting.
So it's really
That's
good.
what makes it
That's
really
pretty
different
cool,
from just trying to do a cash grab.
Mhm.
Because I feel
it's
like
not a cash grab,
inserting a random animated short story in the middle of a movie is definitely not mainstream friendly.
Yeah.
At
No,
least from a
no.
production standpoint, like view.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Liam Neeson's in it. Sigourney Weaver's the grandma in it.
it's got some
What's the
stars.
name? Felicity Jones is in it. Who
Oh,
was
wow.
in Rogue One.
Yeah,
She's the mom.
Oh, that's
So,
cool. Oh,
that's the most perfect adaptation I can think of.
okay. The most. Perfect.
The most. Second would be iRobot. That's way more of a reinvented one. It's
Yeah.
not faithful. I mean, it is
Well.
faithful to some parts.
It's faithful to the concept of the
It's
story.
faithful to the laws of robotics.
Laws of robotics.
there you
yeah.
go.
Exactly.
It's not faithful to the book it's named after. It's faithful to the detective mystery series with the robot and the
Yeah,
detective.
yeah. It took a lot of elements
Yeah.
from those. Yeah.
So it's just interesting. So it's not exactly faithful.
it was a cool.
Like they found a story they liked, but they were like, that's a terrible
Well,
name.
how do
And then
you
they go
take-
looking down the whole list. Oh, there you go. That's
It's
the
like
one.
Lord of the Rings. How do you take something that has so much material and condense it into a 2-hour movie?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
That's the thing. Like any adaptation, you have to write it for a totally different medium. You have to plan it out different. That's why stuff gets changed so much in a lot of ways, because it can't I don't want to say
It's
not
hard to
feasibly done because you
it's-
could almost do anything
It's hard to
with special
translate
effects.
it. Is probably what.
Yeah,
they're figuring.
translate it. There you go.
Well, and it's also how
Does it
they
flow
translate
good?
it. What do you take out? What do you keep in? And then you have all those deleted scenes that are in tons of movies and stuff,
like the
including Lord of the Rings.
Spider-Verse, like you had to completely change the story, right?
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna know who Superior Spider-Man is. You could have made a movie about him, but it would be very unpopular because it would be so dark.
But I think iRobot took all that source material, including Isaac Asimov's plethora of short stories, because the moment where Sunny has the dream, which is actually one of the, I guess, kind of a plot point, which shows the end of the movie, where he says, "The man on the hill isn't me, it's you, detective."
Yeah.
And then you find out the man on the hill is actually the robot.
Yeah.
Was one of the first robot short stories Isaac Asimov published called Robot Dreams, about a robot who could dream. And it was actually him in the book. He was dreaming about taking over humanity. So the movie took that concept and worked it into the movie just beautifully. And you still have this great story about a detective who's trying to solve a murder, which was the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. So I think it does a really good job of taking all that source material and putting it into a movie.
Yeah, it was a good. I mean, I never read any of the Asimov books. I've read a few bits and pieces here and there, but I always remember growing up watching iRobot and always being a fan of it. And as well as you can't go wrong with Will Smith, I mean.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you certainly can. But
Certainly
Don't
can't.
say that.
I mean,
We'll
I've
save
seen
that
Wild
for,
Wild West, David.
we'll save that
We'll
for
save that
another
for another
discussion.
Look, Wild Wild West, totally understand. Bad movie. But iRobot, on the other hand,
Also
he was
bad
a great
movie.
character in that movie.
I like iRobot. I think it does a good job bringing, like you said, elements of Asimov, forming them into one. At first, you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, God, the guy who wrote this does all the modern Star Trek stuff now, which is crap. But I think he actually did a pretty good work with the...
Akiva Goldman?
Goldstein, or whatever his name is. He did a pretty good job with the script, I'd say, and the forming.
Well,
of
he
it
was only
and
one of the
adapting it.
script writers. The actual guy who was the other script writer, Jeff Vanier, I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was his idea, and he had been wanting to adapt Asimov for years.
Oh, that's cool.
But technology was not up to date yet.
No.
And finally, they must have filmed the movie 2001, 2002.
Well, it came out
And it came out in
2004.
2004, so
yeah,
they
2
filmed
and
it
3,
before that.
yeah.
So which is interesting because he had a desire to adapt Asimov because he admired Asimov, but there's just how do you do that?
Speaking of terrible adaptations, David, you know what they should have done with the Cat in the Hat movie with Mike Myers? They should have had a full CGI character of Mike Myers doing the mocap instead of him in makeup and getup, and that would have been amazing.
You know what the mocap was like then?
Yeah,
It would have
Gollum.
been like Dr. Seuss's version of Jar Jar Binks.
That's probably what it would have been.
Now
actually,
that's
you
a
know?
movie I
I'm
would
just
watch.
imagining the really bad VR chat body motion or whatever. It would look like that.
Oh
Did
my
you know
God.
that the first Lord of the Rings, or not the first one, the second one where Gollum is introduced, they didn't use motion capture. They painted over.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they just paint him over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's how they used to do it.
Yeah, they didn't have
which is
that
pretty cool.
I can rapid fire these other three on my top
Yeah, just rapid
five.
fire it.
Jim Carrey's A Christmas Carol.
Pretty good.
Directed by Robert Zemeckis.
Pretty dang good.
The 3D one.
The 3D one is even visually is a very faithful adaptation of the book, because there's segments in the book where they describe him holding onto the robe,
the
belts.
tassel of the
the Ghost of Christmas Present. Yeah.
yeah.
And all the things you see in the movie are direct copy and paste of what's in the book.
So it's like
descriptions. Really
stuff.
interesting.
There's even stuff just mentioned in passing in the book that they show in the movie for a passing
visually
moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Really interesting.
Read the original story and then watch that movie. You're gonna catch it.
Despite
it's
its
crazy.
3D-itis, because it's a 3D movie.
Yeah,
made for
literally 3D. You had to wear
movie,
glasses
yeah.
to watch it.
Despite that, and I think there's only 2 segments in that movie that aren't faithful to the book.
I wonder what Polar Express is then.
It
because-
was
It's based on a
Horrifying.
picture book.
It was a picture book.
Horrifying. That's what it is.
I mean, it sure was. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
those-
traumatized
those
David.
Soulless eyes.
Soulless eyes of Tom Hanks as
What in the
multiple
Polar
people.
As multiple characters.
Yeah, I guess Polar Express walked, so Christmas Carol can run.
So Jim Carrey could crash it all. 'Cause that was the last one.
Yeah, exactly, Jim
Oh no,
Carrey.
the last one they made was Marcy's Mom.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Marcy's
Oh
Mom.
my God, I forgot.
Yeah, that was the
about
last
that.
one he did because
I wish I didn't remember that.
The
Anyway,
other one I had was The Color Purple, but Steven
you
Spielberg's
spelled his
version.
name wrong.
Spielberg?
I don't think it's how you spell Spielberg.
How do I spell it?
Speil is how you say
Is it IE?
I think it's IE.
I.E.
Spielberg.
Spielberg? I don't know.
He's Jewish.
He's Jewish, so it's
I
always
should know
kind of
this.
weird,
I'm
you
part
know?
Jewish, but
Yeah. Okay, but
so Steven Spielberg's version is
is it a faithful adaptation or?
it is
Because I've
and it
never
isn't.
read or watched
It's the
movie.
perfect. It's right smack dab in the middle of Faithful and Reinvented.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I just read the book this year because the musical movie came out, so I wanted to read the book, and that's a hard
Yeah,
read.
all within like 4 days. You like watch the original, watch the new one the next day, and then you start.
and then I
reading
read the book. Yeah,
And you had listened to the musical before you watched them.
yeah.
So
It's got really good music. I really like
lots
that.
of adaptations, a little bit.
But yeah, it's smack dab in the middle. And yet there were people who are totally hardcore fans of the book and were really mad at Spielberg. Well, they were mad at him for a bunch of other reasons too, but part of them were mad because it's not an exact adaptation and it wasn't 100% faithful, even though there are so many scenes that are in the book that made it in the Spielberg movie. I think it's also just how it was portrayed and the fact that he was a white director. People did not like that white Jewish boy directing a movie about
Yeah.
a black story. So look it up. It's true.
No, I know. I remember hearing
The
about
other
it,
one, I don't love Lord of the Rings as much as other people do, but I do have it on there because it is a perfect adaptation. I think, how do you take all that material, like we said? But Peter Jackson knew exactly what to take out and be like,
Yeah.
we don't need to include this. And there were even songs that didn't make it in the movie that were
that
on
was
the
a little
soundtrack.
bit. That was sad. was the
That's something that I
songs.
appreciate about those films is that you find out how many songs are in the Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings. And then you find out that they're like, holy crap, there's so many songs in this book. What the heck?
Yeah.
And then you watch the movie, you're like, all right, is this going to be a musical? Nope.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a musical.
Ralph Bakshi's non-music. It's not a musical.
Yeah.
You can barely see what's going on.
Those are
in that
my
movie.
top 5. I have
Okay.
other ones on that list, but we can move on.